Would you invest in OpenAI right now if you could, through a tender mechanism or otherwise?
Right now, I would not, just because of the instability. You can see that as an opportunity. I will say I actually think that they should, once they get this all sorted out, immediately file to go public. I think that the demand and the outpouring and interest that you've seen and the support for Sam is just absolutely unprecedented in a tech company. It's almost like an unintended pre-IPO roadshow to show the overwhelming demand. So while we're not an investor in OpenAI, I do think that if I were them and I was the ultimate board, which I think has to be a restructured real governance board, I would file for IPO.
I'm digging in there, Josh, because that is a contrarian view when ultimately it looks like the entire company is destroying itself. What would the governance have to look like if a company was to go public?
I think it's the kind of traditional governance that you want to see. You want to have checks and balances. There's a big difference between giving founders control, which has actually worked, we know, in tech from Google and Meta and many others, and then just having basic governance checks and balances that you can avoid these sort of capricious whims of just a handful of individuals around a table. You want the judgment to avoid, as you said, this sort of making devastating mistakes that can be very hard to recover from. And the really important thing here we're seeing is this wasn't because of absence of GPUs. This wasn't because of absence of compute. This wasn't because of algorithms. You know, the great irony is people are so worried about AI destroying all this stuff. It was human nature. It was a bunch of people in a room and the emotions that drove the sort of whimsical and capricious decision to say, we're going to oust this beloved leader in tech.
We just showed a graphic with some of your portfolio companies. You guys are investing in AI, either AI native or AI adjacent companies. What does this do for the competitive landscape, right? There are dozens of companies building large language models. We all recognize that OpenAI was the sort of technological leader, and in some sense, the commercial leader. What opportunity does this present to those you're backing?
Well, start generally and just remember that the one thing that OpenAI had was this pole position, and I believe that they can recover it, but they had predictability, they had stability, they had reliability, and all of that gives confidence, and confidence gives trust, and trust is the ultimate currency. The reason that I watch Bloomberg, the reason that people watch you every day is because they trust you. People partner with a company because they trust it, and this weekend, trust blew up. So it could take 10 years to build a reputation, 10 years to build trust, and 10 seconds to lose it. So a week prior, you had all of these startups that basically with the OpenAI demo day thought, all right, they just killed our latest product or our latest feature. Now they have a second chance because any company that's working with a hospital system or a government group or a major corporation, all those entities, all those customers want to know that they're working with someone who is reliable and predictable and stable. Now, you look at some of our companies, Hugging Face on the open source. We are huge believers in open source. We think that this is probably like exhibit A of why you want open source systems as opposed to closed, siloed, concentrated systems. If you care truly about humanity, if you care about AI really getting out into the far reaches of the industry, you want open systems. So whether it's Hugging Face, Together doing distributed compute, Mosaic ML, which we sold to Databricks, Runway ML, they're all the fastest growing and well-positioned companies in these spaces because they are very heavily geared towards open source.
A lot of them are geared to being safe and to ultimately ensuring that in some way that aligns, if not in OpenAI's case, came first above profitability. And I'm interested in that tension that we continue to see around artificial intelligence and ultimately whether or not we can see absolutely monumental valuations and profitability at the same time as, well, ethical use and deployment.
I do think so. I think that the ethics and the safety are just basic good judgment. You know, what we saw here in this board coup and all this craziness was just bad judgment. Now, you just want good people making good decisions. And whenever I hear anybody say, oh, I'm just trying to do this to save the world, it actually really gets my spidey sense going. I actually find it quite cynical. I really don't trust that. But when you have somebody that's just like, I want to build this thing, I want to solve problems, I want to get every student a teacher and a tutor, I want to help reduce hospital bills and get people better differential diagnoses, I want to help discover new drugs. Those are the things that you really want to be backing. Most of those people are thinking, what could go wrong? I always say that failure comes from a failure to imagine failure. And if you are adequately thinking about the downsides, what can go wrong, without just a pure techno-optimist view, we're going full speed ahead, without looking to the sides and looking through the rear view mirrors, you don't have to have regulation. You don't have to have intense scrutiny. It should just be self-reflection and good leadership to anticipate the failure points so as to avoid them. What happened this weekend with OpenAI and what's still happening was a failure of imagination. People did not imagine that this was possible, that so much risk could be concentrated in just a handful of people's hands to make a decision on what the future would be. There's one big winner here. There's one big winner here, which, as you noted just in the prior comments, is Microsoft. Microsoft, I mean, people are forgetting this.
But really, Josh, really, because ultimately they now have regulatory exposure, they now have a cost exposure, they also don't have that arm's length protection of seeing hallucination built on their own brand type.
I will trade that if I was a Microsoft shareholder or a board member or employee there. I would trade that every time. They put $10 billion of committed capital, how much actually has gone in, whatnot. And what did they get in market cap value? $1 trillion. That is one of the best trades in technology history. $10 billion to create $1 trillion of market value. So I think that they can afford, whether it's $100 billion of regulatory costs, whether it's Brad Smith going and trying to get regulatory capture, which I don't approve of. I think it's wrong for this industry. I think that it's really disingenuous in its attempt. But Microsoft has won $10 billion to yield $1 trillion of market value is a coup of epic proportions.